Hi, and welcome to the June edition of Select Board Roundtable. I'm John Samia, and I'm joined by my colleagues Carlos Garcia, Michelle Conlon, Teresa Flynn, and Beth Casavant. We are filming on the road today at 211 South Street, the Department of Public Works. Today we're going to talk about capital planning, from funding recently by ARPA through our 5-year plan, and as well as desired outcomes as part of our capital planning. And then we'll talk a little bit about planning with respect to the DPW buildings. So let's start off with capital planning. We know that it's not done in a vacuum. It's done over a period of time. So if someone could share how the town goes about capital planning, just to set the table for where we are today with respect to priorities on capital projects.
So a few months ago, we all met as in one of our workshops to sort of take a deep dive into all of our municipal buildings and school buildings in the town, and sort of the current condition of all buildings, and kind of laid out on, like literally laid out on a whiteboard, where immediate needs are, and more pressing concerns, buildings that are in disrepair versus ones that are newer, have had recent updates, to really visualize and lay out where we're at as a community with our buildings. So that was a really important exercise.
Yeah, and during that, what was presented were short-term needs over 1 to 3 years, and then midterm needs, say roughly 4 to 6 years, and then longer term than that. And as part of the process, we know at annual town meeting, there's a capital budget. Usually it's about 2 million, 2.2 million. This year, we were able to use ARPA money to offset it. So this year, the capital budget was unusually low. It was 700,000, but it's because we used the stimulus funds to, instead of taxpayer dollars at that point, to reduce the amount for capital projects. But generally, the town manager has a 5-year capital project outside of the buildings that lays out the plan over a period of time, because you can't do everything at once. We task the town manager. This is part of our strategic planning with desired outcomes of exceptional. And one of the areas that we did task Mr. Mizikar was enhancing long-term financial forecasting to include operational and capital improvements. And as Michelle was saying, that is what we had talked through during the latter part of the winter, which was also presented to us at our March 26th meeting.
Yep.
And one of the measures that Mr. Mizikar was tasked with was identifying major capital investments for the next 5 to 10 years and incorporate the impacts of these projects into a new layered out or aspect of the 5-year financial forecast. So in addition to the buildings here, which we'll get into momentarily, we also had a couple other short-term, the water treatment plant, as well as the cemetery. Mm-hmm. Anyone want to talk about those at all, just to give a high level what else is in the near term?
Well, the cemetery is in front of the planning board right now. I know they had their first public hearing on that, so that's in the permitting process. And then I think the water treatment plant, we have the funds that we need to have allocated there, and start the design work, I believe, on the treatment plant. But I also just wanted to chime in a little bit on the 5-year forecast, but also just looking at capital planning in general. And another reason why we sat down and had this whiteboarding exercise to look at all of the capital improvement needs was because we want to make sure that we plan it out in a way that doesn't burden the taxpayer all at once. Like, we try to keep it kind of level for people, right? There's always going to be some debt that we carry related to our buildings or related to our capital investments, and we want to make sure that as one project rolls off, and that might give us a little bit of room in the debt service, that we're ready with the next project that needs to come on. A town this size doesn't have the luxury of not having a capital project in the works, and I know it may seem to people that we're kind of always looking for the next thing, but we're pretty proud of the fact that our buildings last for decades, right? And when we start talking about this campus, these buildings have lasted 50, 75 years. And that, it just becomes time to make sure that you're looking to the future, understand where the needs are going to be, and if you plan for something, it makes it that much easier for residents to be able to plan as well.
Yeah, and with our capital projects, we have a long-standing record of coming in on time and under budget. And particularly now, we're looking to be future ready. And that's what our most recent projects have been. We expect them to last for at least 50 years, and that we have a track record of showing that we can do that. And with respect to the water treatment plant as well, for PFAS removal on the existing campus, what was also discussed briefly, I believe at town meeting, was the town has opted in the class action lawsuit with other communities to see if we can get funds as well as part of the class action lawsuit, where a lot of cities and towns have joined as plaintiffs against DuPont and 3M and other producers of PFAS. And that hopefully will also mitigate expenses needed from the funds in town and from taxpayers. So we're looking to do everything possible, like we did with the fire truck, to find grants and other resources so we're mitigating the impact, the tax impact on our residents.
Right, when you refer to the fire truck, you mean that we have allocated ARPA dollars to
Yep.
that purchase?
Yep.
Understanding that the timeline for using the ARPA money had changed on us a little bit, and so making sure that no dollars are left on the table, we looked at, okay, what's something big that we need to purchase that we can use this money for? And fire truck seemed to make sense.
Yep. And then in terms of midterm needs, talked about the senior center updates, roof, HVAC updates, life safety systems, dementia accessibility, and stormwater compliance, as well as a separate midterm need. So we're not only looking at short term, but the town wholeheartedly constantly plans and refines the plans, and as facts and circumstances change, particularly with the financial model, there's always fine tuning to make sure that we're best prepared and able to pivot, like we did with the pandemic, that we had the long-term financial model and we're able to pivot and utilize that. So let's talk about why we're here today. We're here at 211 and we can talk about 207, we can break it out, but we could talk about what we've been presented to date. We'll talk about the age of this building, talk about the square footage, talk about the condition. I know all of you have had a chance to walk through, take tours of the building, share with that your experiences to provide more information about 211, and then we can talk about 207, or we can talk about them both at the same time. So I know you've all done tours, so
So one of the things that I noticed when, especially 211, which is the building that we're in right now, we're in the fleet maintenance garage. But just the building, how many vehicles are stored here and how much work is done here. This is sort of the hub for a lot of different departments. Even the library stores their mobile bookmobile here, and vehicles, as we all know with our own personal vehicles, that if you have a garage that you can store your car in, it really helps extend the life of your vehicle, and you have fewer maintenance needs on it, and just the amount of large complex vehicles that the town has on hand that are stored in this garage is amazing. They really kind of squeezed them into every corner of this building. So,
built in 76. Go ahead, Teresa.
No, I was just going to say beyond just storage.
Yep.
I think when the community kind of hears about this optimization project, we want to make sure it's clear that it's not just about where we're storing the vehicles, but the fleet maintenance team is here with us today, and all of the work that they do to maintain those vehicles as well.
And we keep a lot in-house. And the other idea is we bring the fire station or fire trucks down here as well to service those vehicles.
Police cars.
Right. We have a great staff in town. Fortunately, are joining us over here this evening. But
we're keeping them late.
yeah. Well, thank you for staying. But the point is that we're always figuring out the best ways possible to operate. And part of this building's been around since 76. If you walk through the facility, one of the presentations, the bathroom, for example, or so 1976. You have a larger men's bathroom with a shower, but the women don't have the same thing. And we were asked as well, how much there are going to be a couple $1 million of repairs for this building anyways if nothing's done, just to maintain the building. So we've walked through, but it's understanding. The other piece is collaboration, to centralize as well, to leverage efficiencies when everyone is in one location as well, is another important aspect where this could go.
Agreed.
I mean, it's not just the age of the building, it's the condition of the building. And honestly, I think it's, when we look at Shrewsbury and wanting to be an employer of choice, we have to look at the conditions in which our town staff is working. At a minimum baseline, making sure that it's safe, but just making sure that they have the amenities that are, just needed to do their job effectively. So I think that when we see pictures of the condition of not only this building, but water and sewer next door as well, it's you know, we have this, we're very fiscally responsible, but we do tend to have a lot of buildings that kind of get to end of life where it's this critical need that things need to be fixed. And to your point, John, it's not always cost effective just to fix what is there versus really looking at more of an overhaul.
And historically, we've benefited from building new and lasting for, look at the high school, look at the police station, look at the library. Those will be, again, future ready. Keep them in great condition and expect to have them a long time. And we have a long period of doing that. Carlos, I know you presented to us in terms of, for this building, what are the major needs that Mr. Baldinger had talked to us about at our meeting, and he had laid out some of the issues with this building. If you mind just giving a few of those.
Yeah, happy to touch on that, and certainly encourage residents to go back to our March 26th.
Yep.
Thank you. March 26th meeting, and you can see the slideshow of just all of the pictures of the major repair needs and the space needs that we have, not just in this building, but also at 207 South Street. But just to highlight some of the major needs, there's exterior roof replacement and masonry repair, the insulation and HVAC replacement. Teresa, you touched upon, attracting employees to come and work for the town, and so there's certainly restroom and shower facility upgrades that need to happen, ADA compliance that this building doesn't currently meet, that we need to really work on to make sure that we are creating spaces for employees who currently work here and future employees to have the amenities that they need.
I remember at that meeting, we questioned the need for showers. We kind of paused.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
really? So
yeah.
then they explained that the sewer work, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it really put it into context.
The time,
why-
winter
Right.
storms, people
Yeah.
hear 24 hours consecutively, what a shower will do.
And there's one
Yeah.
shower. Like,
Right.
there's one for all of these employees.
Right.
There's one.
Yeah.
One doesn't work. There are
There's
two.
also another thing to think about with winter storms, like you mentioned, like a lot of times we have long duration storms and crews are out on the road for over 24 hours and they need to sleep. It's a safety issue and there's no place here for them to sleep. And so I think what people do now is they might pull their truck into the garage and sleep in their vehicle, but that's not comfortable and it's not really safe if you are looking at somebody who's taking a quick nap for safety purposes so they can get back out and keep clearing the roads. That's not the optimal way to do that. So
And similarly at 207, sewer and water, that was built in the 1950s. It's 11,000 square feet. Similar issues, right, that we had there. Obviously, the building's even older. Teresa, you had asked the cost to upgrade that just to get it, say, compliance per se, but not and I think it was 2.5 to 3 million, what Keith had said to us, just to refurbish that building. But that's not cost effective if you have a building that is breaking down. It just staves it off for a short period of time.
That building is breaking down.
Yeah.
And I hope that when you put some pictures in, that
Yeah,
one
why
of
don't we
the
talk
ones
about
of
the
Yeah.
pictures? I think it's the best way to, we have some pictures that we'll share. And
yeah.
So the building committee walked through on this week, right? We did a 3-hour tour of this campus, and I am not by any means in the construction business. I see no way that I could ever look a taxpayer in the eye and say that we've put $2 or $3 million into 207 South Street.
Right.
So like when we talk about a building project or the need for a building, right? You're always thinking of what's the best value for someone's tax dollar.
Right.
That building has surpassed the end of its useful life. The ceiling is literally falling down.
Yeah.
It is time. And I would imagine that that's what, the employees would tell you the same thing, that working in those conditions is extremely challenging. They're still working in the room where the ceiling is coming down. So I really do think that building, probably not salvageable, but this building has a really good, the bones are good.
Yep.
So I think that, there's probably usable space here. But again, that's something that the building committee will really look at, along with the owner's project manager and eventually an architect when that person is brought on board, to try to determine what's the most effective way to reconfigure the buildings that are on this campus and optimize the space, not only here, but does that mean bringing over employees from town hall who are in this DPW under this umbrella? really make that so that they're a functioning department altogether instead of separate in different locations.
Yeah, what was presented to us, and I had said, in addition, Beth, to what you said earlier, I said economies of scale, one location. We restructured, so it's a true DPW. So we're not in various locations. Fleet management, talked about the fire department, also vehicle fleet wash bay, but obviously not putting the water out there, but making sure we're doing that correctly so we wouldn't just pour it outside, but would have this safety necessitated by cleaning the water and the soap and all that from the vehicles. And it's in one spot. And again, it will enhance collaboration among the departments and efficiencies rather than people being in multiple locations. You both took a tour as well. What stood out the most for you in terms of walking through both 211 and 207?
Yeah, I mean, we took a tour maybe a few months ago, and I think, well, I'll just back up. My very first experience with 207 South Street was as a voter. When
Yeah.
I turned 18 and voted in my very first election, I never had ever walked into that building, and just immediately, any voter who's voted in there, you can see the deterioration of that building, which I think is unfortunate. So, I mean, that's something that I took away in that moment, and also today, when we toured recently. So, I think it's time. It's gone past its useful life, and Michelle's
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah, it's, the room that we vote in, I'm a precinct 10 voter and we vote over at 207, and that's, the room that we vote in is not as, I mean, it's a garage, right? So your expectations tend to be on the lower side, but the rooms off of it in the back of the building, you can see the ceilings coming down. Like there's literally pieces of the ceiling hanging down and insulation hanging down. It's really in rough condition. There's not, employee facilities and break room spaces and things that people need and everybody needs in their job, and there's just, it can't accommodate modern, the size of our town, the size of the infrastructure that is managed by the crews in these spaces. It's really not built for it. So when we have like almost 200 miles of road in town and hundreds of miles of water main and all things that are managed, a really important infrastructure that it requires 24-hour monitoring and maintenance, and it's important work that comes out of these buildings. So I know Mr. Baldinger mentioned when we were talking about the building that we're in right now, 211 South Street, that this building, when it was built in the 70s, was really built with like the future in mind. So like you said, the bones of the building are good. It's built to be able to expand it, to update it. But 207 South Street is in much worse condition. So,
It's also like 25 years older
Yeah.
as well. And it shows.
Yeah.
It shows.
And it houses about 35 employees between the two facilities, not including administration.
Let's say
I
at
think.
least. Yes,
Yeah.
at least.
And so we've identified as a near-term priority this, in addition to PFAS and the cemetery. The cemetery's funded. PFAS has bond floated. Here, we're identifying the project, and we established a committee in April. And Beth is our representative on the committee. So could you talk a little bit about what the committee is
Sure.
and what it's done to date?
So the committee is made up of, our chair is Patrick Pitney. He's a former finance committee member, but also the former chair of, or current still, because they haven't wrapped up, of the police station building committee. So he's got some great experience. Mike Liberty, who's a resident from precinct 4, I believe, town meeting member as well. And then Stephen Walsh, who is a precinct 8 town meeting member. And he and Mike both have extensive experience in development and building. So their expertise has been great. Keith Baldinger sits on the committee. He's the town manager's appointee. And then myself. And I will tell you, I have very little experience with any building projects at all, like the nuts and bolts of building a building. But it is really interesting. So we've already had 3 meetings. The first meeting was more like kind of figuring out what we were going to be doing around our charge. We looked at owners, project managers, had some interviews for a couple of different firms, chose one. So we're going to be working with Vertex, and Vertex is the same OPM that's on the Oak Middle School window replacement project.
Okay.
They have a really great team. They seemed really, really able to deal with our tight timeline, because we do have a very tight timeline on this. We want to make sure that if we need to get in front of town meeting, that the information is there. And now we need to bring on an architect. And so that's what the committee is focusing on right now. We all have proposals from architects. There's 6 architects to look through. And then we will meet on Monday to talk through which architect we would like to bring on board. And the owner's project manager helps us make that decision also, because they're the ones that will work closely with the architect. And then our intention is on July 1st, is to have a meeting, interviews with the architects that we choose, whether it's 2 or 3. And then make that decision, because they need to be on board by the 2nd week in July in order to have a project fleshed out for us. Just the basics, right? Go through the feasibility study, give us a basic project with a basic cost estimate, because right now we don't know costs. That's why we're not talking about costs this evening, is because we would just be spitballing and try to understand. The thing they talk about is they need to understand the program, and that means, like, what's the work that's being done here, and interviewing and those people that actually work in the building. What do you need? What do you need to be here? Sometimes, what's here doesn't work, or what's here does work, and just going through to figure out what's the best way to configure this project,
Yep.
and then, go from there.
And part of the initial charge was, it says, the committee shall recommend a preferred design concept and budget to the select board no later than September 10th, 2024. So
Yeah.
Beth, you talked about a tight timeline.
It's a tight timeline. It's a very tight timeline. So when we look at these architects, or we look at these owners, project managers, we were really looking to make sure that we weren't just going to be a number, that it was somebody that was going to have time to really devote to Shrewsbury. And I think Vertex, made it very clear that they have the time. They were here for the tour on Monday night. We spent 3 hours going through the 2 buildings, and they took extensive notes and pictures, and they're really excited about it. They've done a lot of great DPW work in the state of Massachusetts. And so I think that, we also toured Town Hall, which is something we didn't really touch on.
Yep.
Way back in, seems like forever ago, right? In 2018-19, the police station was actually supposed to be a municipal campus. So it was supposed to include upgrades, not extensive renovations, but upgrades to Town Hall and upgrades, cosmetic and roof and HVAC to, like, the senior center. But then the pandemic changed that, and the select board at the time made the decision to just move forward with the police station. But those needs, especially at Town Hall, haven't gone away. And we're not looking to expand Town Hall. We're not putting on a second floor, like, none of that. It's, in a lot of ways, it's cosmetic stuff that you may not see,
Yep.
right? Like the paint, maybe we should repaint. Maybe we should think about some of the carpeting, the selectmen's meeting room, which could definitely use some upgrades, where we are hearing from people now that they need certain accessibility accommodations, especially if, it's a hybrid meeting. It's not great for a hybrid meeting. We tend to lose the connection sometimes, or if you're sitting where we sit, then the audience can't see the screens. If we turn them towards us, then it's not perfect. But then also we have people who are asking for assistance for hearing impairment. And again, the room isn't set up for that. And then also just HVAC stuff and space. The second floor is all of our, for the most part, our DPW. Is it possible to do like a domino effect, right? And we start to move people out of there, and then how can we utilize that space? It's a lot. It's a lot to come up with by September 10th.
We have the right person in the role for us, so it's good. But the important piece is seeing how all the pieces fit together. And that's in line too with our strategic plan. It's not looking at any decision in isolation, but it's seeing that the impact, as you said, the domino effect, understanding if we do this, how does it benefit us in other areas as well? And the other important piece is this is a very informed decision process, understanding what is done well here, how can we help make it better? We have a great staff, and learn from them, and what efficiencies can we enhance because of a potential project. And it's important to listen to all stakeholders here, just like we did with the strategic plan. The best way to maximize any efficiency or any project is to understand those in the trenches, how we can do better, what we can do to implement it, and how functionally, form, fit, function, we can maximize everything that we do on a daily basis, given the tremendous staff that we have.
And all of it is in the spirit of ensuring that services are not disrupted
Right.
for residents. So hence the the optimization part of it,
Yeah.
looking at, because I know the community will ask, if we have space constraints elsewhere, why didn't we consider that? And we looked at some of these other projects, so excited to see what the recommendations are.
And you'll keep us updated during regular meetings as you have.
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, there's a lot of information. Go back to our March 26th meeting, the presentation. There are a lot of pictures as well that really show the current conditions of the buildings and why we're looking at this and how it makes sense to look at, rather than put a few $1 million on an existing problem that's going to still be a problem. You look at it, what's the best long-term investment, really for long-term dollars? What's the best way to invest our money to make sure it goes further as
Which
possible?
is usually what Shrewsbury taxpayers buy into,
Yep.
right? They are looking to make sure that their tax dollars are being used in a way that's going to solve a problem, not just temporarily solve a problem.
And that's why, again, planning's so important. We do it regularly, every year, early on. It never stops. We talked about capital planning. During the summer, we'll be looking at the financial model. It's never stops, which is important. So we'll be able to pivot if something changes, but also be informed when it changes. So it's not a 6-month, 9-month reaction. Instead, it's being proactive.
Yeah. And then, like you said, those things don't happen in a vacuum. We look at them all together, and that was part of our whiteboarding exercise was, looking at the financial models, looking at capital needs and how it all fits together and how, our space needs and our financial needs can work together in a way to have a minimal impact on residents and taxpayers while maintaining, the high level of service that we, residents want in our community. So it's a constant, constant trying to balance all of those things together.
And which is what residents expect, and that's what Town Hall strives to do. Again, the goal is to create an environment where all can thrive. And that means internal stakeholders as well as all residents. So we're running out of time, and I want to say thank you to the staff that stayed here to keep the building open. Any parting thoughts before we conclude?
Hopefully we can do some tours or as we get a little
Yeah.
farther down in the process, if the public wants to walk, through and be able to see the condition of the building. I think that's really helpful to taxpayers to be able to understand exactly why we're recommending such a project.
Great. Yeah, I think that's great. Well, great. I want to thank Mark Sarah from Shrewsbury Media Connection for coming here as well on this hot June evening.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's really
for
hot.
thank you
9
for
to
joining
5.
us, and we'll see you next month in July on the Select Board Roundtable. Thank you.